Hey guys, so I had a bunch of data that was sent to me as a PDF instead of as a CSV or some kind of workable data format. So what I want to do is walk you all through how you would go about reading in a bunch of data out of a PDF into a data frame in Pandas and then converting that into a CSV after the fact. So there's a really great library for reading PDF data tables known as Tabula. Unfortunately, that library is in Java, excuse me, but you can actually pip install a library called Tabula Pi that essentially uses those Java bindings under the hood in order to be able to grab that specific data set and then push it directly into a Pandas data frame. So the actual library, again, is named Tabula Pi. But when you do your import, you'll just import it as Tabula. So the data set I have is essentially a bunch of movies with a release year and rating. And the first 3 pages are the first couple of columns of the data set. And then the next set of pages are like another chunk of the data. So at some point, we're going to have to do a pd.concat, but this is going to read in super duper weird, and there's going to be a whole bunch of problems. I could have tried using Excel with this, but there's a couple of problems. The first, there's no delimiters here. So if I did something like Control-C to copy this data, and I can go ahead and open LibreOffice Calc, which is pretty much analogous to Excel. If I try to just paste this in here, it doesn't come in the right format. I could highlight, all of these cells in the notebook and get the same behavior. I could also do something like paste special and getting into unformatted text, and it doesn't look like my dialog box came up correctly for that either, as well as doing something like paste special where I'm setting up the unformatted text. It's a hot mess, and it's just not going to work with Excel. So this is basically a task that you're going to have to jump into Python at some point. So again, what's cool about the Tabula library is it's going to let me read in this data with a tabula.readPDF. I specify where that file is and how many pages I want to read. I'm just going to go ahead and grab everything, and we're just going to work up everything in Python. So out of the gate here, I essentially get a list of data frames. So for example, if I did something like df bracket 0, I get this nice, pretty data frame of my data, and if this was a 1-page file, we'd be done. We'd be putting this in a .2 CSV, and we'd be out of there. But unfortunately, nothing's ever that easy. We can see on our second page, we get kind of jacked up headers where magically this row has become a header, so we're gonna have to figure out how to fix that one. And by the way, I am doing this live, so I have no idea how to fix this yet. I'm just gonna be solving it as we go. Looks like page 2 again, or excuse me, page 3, index number 2, looks analogous to the previous one. So whatever we apply to page 2 of the PDF, we can apply to page 3. Page 4, this is where we're jumping into the new IDs for these other columns down here. So we'll probably just be concatenating these values onto the first set of 3, but I'd be willing to hazard to guess that, yeah, so for my headers on page 5 and page 6, I should expect to run into issues with that as well. So there's a couple of tasks we have to do here, and the first thing we definitely want to do is go ahead and write those down. Super helpful. So the first thing we want to do is reformat the pages 2 and 3 to be appropriate with page 1. Work with page 1. We will do the same thing later on with reformatting pages 5 and 6 to work with page, 4. I'm gonna need to concat pages 2 and 3. So as I concat, I'll just say concat first part of data with the relevant, or concat rows, there we go, of first section and cat rows of second section, and then at the end here we're going to join two sections together. And the last thing I need to make sure that I mention here is that I need to fix column headers. Oh, well, I guess that would be part of that reformatting of pages 2 and 3. So again, anytime you're working on a bigger project that's going to be a little bit more involved and have a bunch of steps, make a roadmap for yourself. Don't get lost halfway in and then later on, oh yeah, I gotta do that thing. Plan what you're going to do the thing, have a nice little set of checkboxes you can use along the way. Again, for Markdown, having these, whoops, do you have to get rid of the spaces on both sides? Yeah. So Markdown has these really great checkboxes you can utilize to make sure that you're keeping up with what you're trying to do here. And I actually don't know if, yes, you do need to have the bullet points in front of them. But again, checkboxes, they're cool. No, you can't click on them, but you can throw that X in there to essentially check it off as you go. So for the first section, that's going to be DF 0 through 2. Yep, so there's 0, there's 1, and there's 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull those out from that original list. And in fact, I probably shouldn't call that DF. I should call that, let's just call this data for right now. Or we'll call it raw data. And I want to select positions 0, 1, and 2. So I need to go 1 past that. So that'll be raw data 0 through 3. And we'll call this the first section. For the first section's second page. Okay, so I've got to take this header and actually push it back into the data. Is there a clean way to do that? I could just convert that to a row, push that back in, and then rename the, or like append it. Ugh, that's gonna be gross. And then the problem with appending it is gonna be that things aren't gonna be in order anymore. Yeah, so let's do a little Googling here, and hopefully we can convert that into a row. Let's do Pandas, convert header to first row. So looks like I've done this before at some point. Maybe it's possible. We'll find out. Make first row as header. That's the opposite of what we want to do, and that's going to jack up our search history here. Column headers into a row. All right. We'll accept cookies, I guess. That is a clever way to do that. So you transpose it. No, you reset index, then transpose it, reset index again. So like what was your header at the top becomes an index on the side. When you do the reset index, it gets pushed in, and then you transpose it back. That'll work in this case. It will not work for large data sets though. So large data sets, you'd have to do something a little bit differently, but that's okay because this is what, 100 rows of data? Cool. I mean, deal with the realities of your data. If they don't require you to do anything crazy, then don't do anything crazy. So we'll transpose it, reset index, and transpose it back. And then you get this weird index thing. Can I... Well, I guess I don't need to renumber the index because this would be that movie ID. So what I would want to do here is make sure I rename my columns when I'm done here. And then once I've done that, I can set the movie index, the movie ID, to be the index of the data frame. And then once I've done that, because movie ID will be the appropriate thing there, I can just concatenate those rows together. And then later on, we'll reference that same movie ID. Ooh, these don't have a movie ID. So I have to make sure that this second half, when we get to that, stays in the right order. That's going to be super important. Oof. This is going to be a fun little project to get into, guys. So let's go ahead, and I've got my first section. We've already done this transformation. So we'll call this, do I want to call it page 2? I'm going to do the same thing with page 3. Should I build a function for it? In my second section, I'm going to transpose, reset, index, and transpose as well. So what I'm going to do is, I want to avoid having a lot of repetitive code. Let's write it for one and then think about the more crazy stuff. So that first section with the transposing, resetting index, and transposing, we'll call this our page 2. And then on page 2, I want to set the columns to now be identical to that of the first page. So what we could do is first section bracket 0 dot, it'll be dot index or dot header. No, dot index is going to give me the numbers on the side, so dot columns. And then we'll preview page 2. Looks good. So then we'll do a page 2 dot set index equal, not equals, that's a function, and I want to set the index to be that movie ID column. And we want to do in place equals true. Cool. So I'm going to do the same thing, but for page 3. And then page 4 is going to change up a little bit because well, I'm not going to use an index there. Oh, how curious. Oh man, so what I'm going to have to do is like a reset index right before I concatenate these two halves together. The reason I'm going to have to do that is I need there to be a numerical index that forces ordering, and then I can do the join on that index. Unless I want to do dot join instead of concatenate. Can I? Or excuse me, pandas dot merge instead of join. Merge. Can I merge without using uses a data state style join? If joining columns on columns, the data frame indices will be ignored. So yes, this is where I would do so I could do a merge with left to right and just completely ignore keys, but I want to probably go ahead and put keys in there because that's a little bit into my comfort zone. Again, the goal here is a quick and dirty fix of transforming 100 rows, not so much the making this work for a high performance version. Additionally, if I was thinking about a more production or high performance system, I would write the bad version and then write the good version behind that. So again, I've got some data frame that I'm grabbing out of this original data set. So we could say def, we'll call this the page from, no, def from page. It would take in some data frame of that original page. We would do the transposition of that data frame, reset index.t, and make sure that we push that back over the original data frame. df.columns is equal to the columns out of the section that we're working with. What should I do here? I should probably just put the section example. Or at least just the list of the headers, maybe. That would probably be a better approach, is just requiring a list. And then do a set index to some specified index header. Maybe it would be the, we'll just call it primary index or primary key. And make sure to do that in place. And then return this data frame. So using this function, I would do, let's just make sure we regenerate that. And then we'll do something like my page 2 is equal to the specific data frame I want to work with. So it's going to be my first section's second item. The section headers will come from the first section bracket 0 dot columns, and the primary key is going to be movie ID. So if I run that, data frame is not callable. So I did data frame where? Oh, wow, I used page 2. It should be equals df from page. Get it together, kid. And we'll do a return for page 2 so we can see that. That looks good. And then page 3. And that's going to be essentially same song, different tune, except I want to reference the next page in that first section. And that looks good as well. I got movie ID, title, release year, rating, nothing extra there. So now what I can do is to concatenate, and we can actually get rid of this guy now. We'll do a pd.concat of everything in the first section, and I don't need that second set of brackets. I'm going to do Oh wait, I can't do that yet because first the first data frame in that set needs to have the first item converted. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and set the index for this guy to now be movie ID as well. And again, in place equals true. And now I can do pd.concat axis equals rows and join equals inner. And it looks like we jacked that up. Yep, I was supposed to do columns. Yes. No. No. I was definitely not supposed to do columns. All right, what did I jack up here? Let's take axis out of the equation altogether. Let's just make an inner join. All right, what am I doing wrong here? Because first section is a list. Okay, what I should have done, instead of creating new variables for page 3 and page 2, I should do first section bracket 1 and just overwrite the original variable there. And same song, different tune, using this guy. All right, what did I do wrong here? New values have 3 elements. Oh, because I overrode my first item in that section. So now first section 0 columns doesn't line up with the number of columns that exist for this data set until you set that. Okay, so what we're gonna do here, go ahead and reset first section. And will that fix that? New values have 3 elements, and that's because when I'm doing the transformation, I'm altering the order, or rather the set of columns that are available. So it does make sense to use page 2 and page 3, but what I should have done in the concat, and again, we're just doing quick and dirty. You don't have to make it perfect, it's fine. You'll have a record of all the stuff you did. Oh no. Well, when all else fails, reset index, rerun that bad boy. And let's get past all of that. Boom, boom, boom. Cool, there goes page 2. Boom, there goes page 3. Set the index on that, and instead of just doing first section, we'll do first section bracket 0, page 2, and page 3. So again, lesson, be careful about going up and down in your notebook. Try to always go forward, or at least reset your notebook if you're going up, if you find yourself going back and forth too much. So I've got this nice, beautiful concatenated data set. Let's go ahead and make sure we save that to a variable now. We'll call this section 1 complete. And then we're going to do more or less the same thing for the second section. So we're going to go down to, well, first off, we can check off some work here. And we're going to go 4 through 7 for our second section here. And again, I'm doing this super manually right now. If there were like 80 or 90 sections, I would do it for the first 2, then figure out how to write a function for those first 2, then figure out how to do a function that abstracts to all of them. Don't try to solve the entire problem all at once. Solve the small version of the problem, then scale it up and scale it up again and scale it up. So I've got my second section. Oops, and I need to do bracket 0 there. Cool, second section. I've already got some pretty gnarly issues with my titles here. Let's check out 1 and 2. Huh. Let's change that to 3 to 6. That's better. Cool. So now I've got my second section. I want to essentially use those functions again, and let's go ahead and fly by the seat of our pants on this one. I want to do no longer the first section. I want to work with the second section. This is going to be the instance of 1, and we'll call this the... Actually, let's try and do it over the list indices like we were supposed to the first time, before I started jacking things up. And our new index, we are not going to have an index here actually. So we're just going to have to leave it as the index that's already there, which means our function might not work. Or we can just pass in the existing function, or the existing data frame's index. That's a slick way to do it. Yeah, because we're doing set index on some primary key, so we can just arbitrarily do it on anything. So let's try to get fancy. That's always dangerous. We do second section dot index. I want to list my indices. Do I need to pandas list index? Dot index dot values. Cool. Oh no. Oh, because I need to select an individual data frame. That would help quite a bit. All right. And I could also just do dot index. Excellent. So let's see if we can get away with this. We're going to do second section bracket, and it needs to be the section we're actually on, dot index. So data frame from page, second section, so that's going to be the one we're actually working with. There's page 2. The column names are going to come from this first instance of that page, and the indices are going to come from the indices that are already there. Let's take a swirl. Expected 45 rows, received array length of 44. All right, so can I do dot values and cheat with that one? Nope. Okay, So what's probably happening here is the indices are counting one short of what actually needs to be done there, and that's okay. So what we're going to do is the length of, or rather we can do dot shape. Or we want to just add one to it. Let's do range. And I believe we can do, can you do lin on this, or do we need to just grab the shape? Cool. So if I did len +1, and between parentheses, and let's do that len plus one more value. Oh, because I did the reset, or excuse me, the set index, I don't think you can pass in a list there, right? Yep, you have to supply a keys or a set of labels. Or a list containing an arbitrary combination of column keys and arrays. Cool. So let's, or I could make a pandas index from that range. Ha! So previewing that really quickly, cool. So that goes from 0 to 44, and then we're gonna do the same thing with our last section there. And so every instance of section 1 is now gonna be section 2. And previewing that again. Awesome. And here's where things are going to get tricky, is concatenating all of that together. First off, double checking that 0 again. Good. So I've got 0 to 43, 0 to 44, and the last 10. So we're going to try a pd.concat of the second section. And the default should be rows. I got 101 rows. Yikes. I think I only have 100 rows of data. Yikes. Let's oops. Is null.sum. Oops, is null as a function. Cool. And is null. Cool. And we're going to do dot duplicated dot sum. And there's a couple of duplicates in there, but it's going to appear to be a duplicate because I don't have exactly perfect data left or right on this, and that's okay. Or excuse me, a better explanation for that would be, I don't have all the columns of my data. I've only got the current on hand and rental price, so it's very likely that I have quite a few duplicates throughout this data set. So what I want to do is, I know I've got 101, and actually, first off, this is going to be my now, what do we call the other one? We call that section 1 complete, so this is going to be section 2 complete. So let's set the shape on that really quickly. I've got 100 columns here, or excuse me, 100 rows and 3 columns, and section 2 complete, again, has 101. So I have to figure out what in the world happened that made this guy have more instances. Is the first index here 0? No, it's got 1. So if I look at the tail of this, oh, did I not renumber my indices? Let's do, well, we'll come back to that in a second. Hold on. That's interesting. So if I had to take a guess, it's probably either the very first or the very last row doesn't belong. What I can do in terms of the join, though, is to do an outer join. So if I have a null row, that's perfectly fine. So I would love to have perfectly symmetric data. We might not have perfectly symmetric data, and that's okay. But what I do want to do is first make sure in section 2 I fix up those indices. Section 1, I need to make sure that I do a reset index so that I get nice values all the way down in terms of numbering those rows. So section 2 complete. Let's try a reset index really quickly. Yeah, that'll work for it. So we'll do a reset index both for section 1 and section 2. And make sure I haven't missed a meeting here, guys. Cool. We'll also do that. In place equals true. And now we can do a pd.concat. That'll be both section 1 and section 2. The axis is going to be on the columns. I want to add these side to side together, and they need to utilize that same set of index numbering. And I'm actually going to do an outer join on this. So now I've got 101 rows and 7 columns. I've got a doubling on this index column, so we're going to go back and remove that after the fact. That's perfectly fine. Got 101 rows. That's where we should be. So we'll call this full data. And actually on that pd.concat, can I specify index as being the oh wait, no, because it would always show that index column, wouldn't it? pd.concat. We're going to grab our, nope, we don't want to ignore index. Oh, the default behavior is outer. I gotta remember that. Nope. So it'd probably be a join then. Might have been the better approach. Yeah. join with other data frame either on index or a key column. That way I could have done it on the index. Otherwise joins index on index. All right. So if I had just done dot join and how would be outer, yeah. And you don't specify because you're doing a join instead of a concat, so I wouldn't need to do my access declaration. Oh, you do the first data frame join onto the second data frame. So we'll do section 1 complete. Whoops. Joined onto section 2 complete. As an outer join and previewing full data.head. Looks like same song, different tune. You still get this index column. What's full data.shape? Oops, shape is a property, not a method. Cool, still get 101 by 7. So the big thing here is we just need to make sure we drop this index column out of our data. So let's go ahead and do that. Cool. And finally, we want to make sure this is in place equals true. And once we've dropped that column, what we'll want to do next is set the index back to movie ID. And then preview. Oh, wait. I didn't just set, I want to set index. I also want to do that in place equals true. And I want to go ahead and preview that right after. So now I've got my index as movie ID, all of my columns, removing the index, movie ID, title, release year, rating, and current on hand and rental price. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and full data dot to CSV. I believe it is in class with a hyphen. Yep. In fact, let's just go ahead and copy that guy. And we're going to do a .csv. Going ahead and saving that file. Previewing that. Nope, wrong file. There we go. Movie ID, title, release year, rating, current on hand, and rental price. And looks like we have almost everything right. Didn't have a movie ID for that very last one. So again, this is where I would either go ahead and simply remove that last row in order to make it more consistent, or just go ahead and manually throw that 101 in there. I probably in the concatenation step should have created a new index for that particular row, but things like that happen sometimes. So another alternative is I could have made the values of movie ID equal to the index number. That way I would have had guaranteed numbering for each one of those particular items. So I hope that was at least useful for you guys. And again, I'm doing this live, so the mistakes, the kind of corner cases, the weird things I'm running into, the kind of quick and dirty decisions that I'm making, all those are happening live, and I want you to see what that kind of looks like. Finally, I also want you to again, I hope that you will appreciate at least the Tabula library, where you can see that I pulled this data that, again, this is not a great way to send someone data. Please do not ever send someone a PDF of your data set, but that the Tabula library can help you get out of that problem should you run into it. With that, I hope you guys have a great time, and I will catch you some other time.